There are these forces out there, some of the most powerful on the planet, and they're shaping pretty much everything, what we buy, how we work, even the economies of entire countries. But a lot of the time, they operate just out of sight. Today, we're going to pull back that curtain and look inside the global giants, multinational corporations. So, what is it that gives these companies such incredible power?
You can probably name a few of the big ones off the top of your head, right? But the actual scale of their collective influence is, well, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. To really get it, we've got to look at the numbers. And trust me, they are genuinely mind-boggling. Okay, get this. The top 500 multinational corporations control half, that's 50% of all world trade. Just let that sink in for a second. A group of just 500 companies is at the wheel for half of the entire global flow of commerce.
And it's not just that top tier. In total, we're talking about over 100,000 of these companies. And together, they control almost 790,000 subsidiaries all over the world. It's this massive interconnected web where a decision made in one boardroom in, say, California can send ripples through a community thousands of miles away.
And all that economic muscle, it translates directly into dominating innovation. These same companies get a staggering 80% of all technology royalty payments on the planet. So they're not just controlling today's markets. They are literally shaping the technologies that will define our future.
All right, so we have a sense of their incredible, almost unbelievable scale. But let's get a clear definition down. What exactly are we talking about when we use a term like multinational corporation?
At its most basic level, it's just a company that operates in at least 2 different countries. But the really crucial part is that second bit, foreign direct investment, or FDI. This is the key. We're not just talking about exporting products, making a car in Japan and selling it in Germany. We're talking about actually building the factory in Germany. It's about having physical assets, people, and operations on the ground in another country.
Now, because they're so complex and their reach is so vast, people see these corporations in totally different ways. One of the classic metaphors is the octopus, this mysterious, complex creature with tentacles that seem to be everywhere at once, quietly pulling strings from some central unseen brain. It can feel a little unnerving.
But then, on the flip side, some people see them as dolphins. This view is all about their incredible speed and agility. It paints them as these super smart, efficient navigators that can expertly ride the complex waves of global commerce, always adapting and outmaneuvering the competition.
And then there's the third view, the dinosaur. This metaphor sees them as these massive, kind of old-fashioned giants. They're not necessarily surviving because they're innovative or smart. They just keep going because of their sheer, immense size. They're just lumbering across the economic landscape, seemingly too big to ever fail. So whether you think they're an octopus, a dolphin, or a dinosaur, every single one of these companies faces the exact same fundamental challenge, this constant internal tug-of-war between thinking globally and acting locally. I mean, just think about it for a second. Put yourself in the CEO's chair. How on earth do you run one coherent company when your employees and your customers are scattered across, say, 100 different countries, each one with its own unique culture, its own laws, its own market demands? It's a huge puzzle. And this really captures that core tension perfectly. On one side, you have this massive pressure to create a single, unified global strategy. It's all about efficiency. But on the other side, you got this undeniable need to adapt and localize for every single market you're trying to win. So it all comes down to a trade-off. If you go with a unified global strategy, you can get huge cost savings from economies of scale, and you can make sure your quality is consistent everywhere. But a local strategy gets you so much closer to your customers. It helps you navigate tricky local politics and lets you tweak your products for what people actually want there. It's a massive, massive balancing act. And this dilemma isn't just some theoretical headache for executives. It has actually forced companies to develop 4 very distinct strategies for how they compete on the world stage. So let's break down that playbook. So how does a company actually decide which way to go? Is it just a gut feeling? Not at all. The choice really boils down to how they answer 2 really basic questions about how they're structured. Okay, decision number 1 is all about geographic dispersion. It's a simple question. How physically spread out is all your stuff? Your factories, your offices, your people? Are you mostly concentrated at home, or are you scattered all across the map? And the second big decision is about organizational coordination. Basically, how tight of a leash does headquarters keep on everything? Do the managers in other countries have the freedom to call their own shots? Or is every little detail managed from the top down? Now, here's the cool part. When you plot those two decisions on a grid, you get these four very clear strategies. For example, if you have really high coordination, everything's run from the top, but low physical dispersion, most of your operations are at home, you're a global exporter. Now, jump to the opposite corner. If you're highly spread out but have low central control, you've got a multi-domestic strategy, where each country basically runs itself. And then, in that top right box, the most complex one, with high dispersion and high coordination, you get what's called a transnational strategy, which is this incredibly difficult attempt to get the best of both worlds. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time inside the company's head looking at their strategy. But let's flip the script. What about their external impact? How are these giants actually seen by the countries where they decide to set up shop? Are they a friend or are they a foe? Well, a country's view really depends on two key things. First, what's its own economic strategy? Is it trying to grow by exporting to the world, or is it focused on replacing imports with locally made goods? And second, what's its policy? Is it really open and permissive to foreign investment, or is it more restrictive and protective of its own industries? How a country answers those two questions pretty much determines the entire relationship. And those answers create four totally different relationships. For instance, in a country that's both permissive and focused on exports, think somewhere like Singapore or Ireland, these multinational companies are seen as valuable partners in growth. But in a country that's more restrictive and is trying to protect its own industries, they can be seen as outright villains who are threatening the nation. And then you've got all the shades of gray in between, like being seen as a necessary evil or an independent collaborator. And here's the thing, this relationship isn't set in stone. Not at all. The balance of power between a giant corporation and a host country is constantly shifting. It's a negotiation that really never ends. This is where the power dynamics get really fascinating because they can completely flip over time. Check out that top row. Before a company invests in a country to get around trade barriers, the host government holds all the cards. They can say yes or no. But the moment that factory is built and all those jobs are created, the power can shift dramatically back to the corporation. Why? Because if they threaten to leave, it could devastate the local economy. For investments that are all about exporting, though, the power dynamic tends to be a lot more stable right from the get-go. So all of this leads us to the big question for the future. As the global landscape keeps shifting, with new technologies, new trade patterns, new political tensions, will these massive, powerful companies prove to be agile dolphins, able to adapt to a changing world? Or will they become lumbering dinosaurs, just too big and too slow to change, basically waiting for their own extinction event? The answer to that is going to define the next era of our global economy.